Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. Alright, in this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews Róisín Bohan, the frontwoman of the Dublin-based grunge-inspired rock band Queen Bitch, discusses forming the project, their upcoming first single of the year and their first double-sided single, Even If I Pray / a popular song, their plans for their debut record which is expected to release sometime next year, their upcoming summer gigs, and much more. On Wednesday, May 28th, Queen Bitch will perform at the Generator Hostel in Smithfield as part of the Breaking Sound Showcase, and on June 21st they'll perform at the Crowbar, Terrace in Temple Bar. That's a launch gig for the single that's coming up. Tickets for both of those shows are available in the description of this episode. Thank you and enjoy.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi Roisin, how's it going? You alright?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little under the weather, but I'll persist.
Nice to meet you. Sorry to hear you're not
No, no,
feeling at your
I'll
best,
I'll survive, unfortunately.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, with Queen Bitch's music, I guess I'll sort of start maybe with a little bit about your background. From my understanding, I mean, your background is more in, and correct me wherever I go wrong, which I inevitably will. My understanding is that your background is more in visual design. I mean, that's what you studied, that's what you went to college for. That's what I
Mm,
believe you were a curator, if I'm correct.
mm.
And then during the pandemic, you started writing songs. Had you been a musician prior to that, or was it just kind of something to do to occupy time during the
Yeah.
pandemic?
Yeah, it was very much one of those like lockdown hobbies that I kind of took up, and it's the only one that's actually stayed as things have kind of got back to normal. But I just happened to like I had played guitar a bit when I was a teenager, and then I didn't play for ages. I moved out of home and I didn't bring a guitar with me, and I didn't have one, and then I decided to buy myself a guitar um at Christmas just before the pandemic happened, just something to get back into, for myself as a hobby. And then when the lockdown happened, I just had loads of time, obviously, and I was playing way more than I would have if the lockdown hadn't happened.
Yeah,
um and I found myself just like messing around and kind of coming up with melodies. And even then I was like, oh yeah, this is something that's happening, but like I wouldn't have taken it serious, and sure, we had so much time, like it was 2 years going in and out of lockdowns. So I started to kind of be like, oh, maybe I actually might do something with these melodies. Maybe I might actually, try and write a song, and then maybe I'll actually perform the song, because I never performed music, other than a few like piano competitions when I was a child, which, like, oh my God, the anxiety and nerves I would feel at those things, they didn't make me want to perform necessarily. But that was classical music. That was quite a different thing altogether. But yeah, I suppose it was like I just kept following the thread, like the melodies came, and then I was like, maybe I'll make a song. Maybe I'll perform the song. Oh, maybe I'll record the song. And yeah, here we are. So
just
yeah.
pulling out a thread.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have to ask, did you start with acoustic guitar?
Yeah, yeah. So I did own an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar when I was younger, but again, I just didn't really do anything with them. I was a very like I still am, like, I can be quite shy. And I was a shy kid in ways, not in other ways. Maybe in other ways I was quite outgoing, but the thought of, like, going and perform. I think I tried busking when I was a teenager, and yeah, I would have such kind of like fear of performing that I would freeze up. I would forget
Yeah,
words, I would blank, I wouldn't be able to play chords. And when I started writing these songs and I was like, well, I want to perform them, I still had that, like, really, like, that nerve of, like, nervousness around performing. So I really had to push myself and overcome that fear. So I started going to open mic nights in January 2023. And I was like, this is just gonna be messy. Like, I went up there, I forgot words, I forgot chords, but I just pushed myself through it. And luckily, like, the open mic communities in Dublin are very supportive. So like I went to the open mic and I was blanking on words and I was like, sorry guys, and people would just cheer you. They'd be like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can do it. And it really helped. Like I have a video from my first performance singing one of the songs that I recorded and released, and like my throat, like my vocals singing is terrible because I can hear that my throat is all tightened up because I'm so nervous. And I can really see the progression I've made over the last couple of years. I don't really get nervous anymore, but I'm still trying to like own the stage more and become more comfortable, taking up the space. But definitely the nerves part of getting up and doing it is gone now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because some of the experiences you were saying there, with the nervousness of like playing piano as a kid, busking, which I've spoken to other people who busked before, and it's kind of like it's a weird environment because like from their perspective, it's like some people are very like they'll take time out of their day, stop in the middle of the street and listen to you, and other people are just like going about the day-to-day lives and just sometimes even kind of give you like scornful looks and things.
Mhm.
And then, as you mentioned there, like doing open mic nights and kind of getting into that scene, that was kind of a little nerve-wracking at the beginning. So, what kind of gave you the tenacity, I guess, to persist?
Um, I think it's just the songs. Like if I do say so myself, I felt like I wrote a bunch of good songs. I was like,
Yep.
these are good songs. And I was like, well, what would I do with them? Because I want them to be heard. And they're very personal. So I mean, like I don't have like any connection with the music industry. I'm not like gonna be like, oh, I'll sell them to another artist. Like that wasn't really something. But I was like, well, they're my songs. They're personal to me. They come from personal experiences. So I was like, well, I have to sing them.
Yeah.
So it was just that. Like I just really believed in the songs and wanted to share them with people and have them heard. So I was like, well, you're just gonna have to get over this fear. It's the only option here.
Yeah. No, and do you think like you'd be comfortable singing like other people's songs, or does it have to have that kind of personal connection to you?
Mm. To be honest, like I don't play an awful lot of covers. I did go busking a few times more recently, actually. And I played some covers, and I had some good experiences. Like as you said, there it is a real mixed crowd, but you get all sorts. You get the good and the bad. But I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have any bad experiences. But I was playing a cover by Julia Jackson and a woman from, ooh, was it New Zealand? Is she from New Zealand? Um,
It's hard to discern the accent, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was a woman from New Zealand came up to me and she was so happy to hear the song because she's from New Zealand and she was like on a trip and it made her feel like home and she gave me a tenner and she was just
Oh,
so thankful and it's just like a really nice experience. But I suppose like I work full time and like I give the music as much time as I can, but I don't really get around to doing like a lot of different music. I fit in what I can, but the original songs are the priority for sure because that's kind of why I did all of this in the first place, started this project. But I have a couple of covers that I do, but I don't if someone was to ask me like what do I like to play a lot of, um well actually I would have an answer for that. But yeah, the originals really are my focus.
I have to ask a little bit about kind of overcoming the nerves there. So, for you, did it have like a moment of like something clicked where you're like, okay, this feels right, or was it just more of a gradual thing? You look back and go, oh, I guess I'm not anxious anymore.
Yeah, it was definitely gradual. Definitely gradual. I'm trying to think. Like I suppose at the start, like I was, it was funny in a way because I had to. There was a few things happening at the same time in that kind of like gradual development of things because I said I was developing melodies, but I was finding it really hard to actually finish songs. Like I
Mhm.
was getting really like nitpicky about like lyrics and like, oh, this isn't good enough or this could be better. And I wasn't finishing the songs. And again, I was like, well, you need to finish the song so you can go sing it at an open mic night. So it was like, the chicken or the egg. I was like, right, I'm gonna go to this open mic night tonight. I don't have the song finished, but you're gonna have to finish it. And sometimes I was like writing a line on the way to the
Yeah.
open mic night. And then I was like, oh God, how am I gonna remember this now? Because I've just written it. So like I was forgetting lyrics out of nerves, and then I was forgetting lyrics because I had just finished writing them that day. Um, but then, as time went on, it all just kind of started to settle in and to fall into place. And now, like, I'll sing, one of the songs that I don't even have to think about. I could be thinking about something else. and the lyrics are just like automatically coming out of my mouth
Yeah.
because I just, the repetition. So yeah, definitely just a gradual development.
Yeah, no, I actually sometimes think that those kind of like time restraints where it's like, well, I have to do a gig, so I need these songs finished, or I need to be in the studio on Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of like sort of immovable deadline is conducive to creativity, or because I think sometimes like people, I don't know, I've talked about this with kind of other creatives where this is my opinion. I don't want to impose this on anyone, but my kind of opinion is I think everyone who's kind of creatively minded has very grandiose ideas of like what the stuff they're creating can be,
Mhm.
and I think if you don't sort of impose some kind of deadline, it can just kind of like sit by the wayside because I think that's kind of like the root of procrastination in some ways.
Mhm.
You have this kind of like beautiful idea, but you're scared of like the human fallibility in order to
Yeah.
create it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think a part of it for me as well is like I tried a bit of writing when I was a teenager, and it was like a kind of like because I had that like that shyness around performing at that time, it was something I gave up on quite easily, I suppose, because it
Yeah,
just didn't feel like something I could see myself doing. And as then I went more of like a visual art route because in that context, you're kind of if you're making art, you're like in a studio on your own and then you put the art out, but it's not about like, you and people looking directly at you and you standing in front of a crowd and
sure.
performing. So that was kind of that made more sense for me at the time. But it was something I suppose that like deep down I did really want. And I was turning it down for the wrong reasons. I was turning it down because I was like, no, it's not me, I'm too afraid. But that wasn't really the right reason. It was a part of myself that I wasn't allowing myself to like express or kind of I was suppressing something.
Right.
And then the lockdown happened, and I was afforded that time to start writing. And then I turned 30, and I was like, oh my God, like, like, as all the things I was saying about, like, am I going to sing these songs? But I was like, am I going to let this fear hold me back for the rest of my life, or am I going to like confront it and overcome this fear? And I think it was as part of me turning 30 as well. I was like, you need to, either like get with it, what are you doing with your life? Like get with it or, or don't. But you have to make some decisions here. And I remember when I was younger, I tried a bit I did like a couple of acting classes, and again I was really nervous and really shy, and that's something that I did a bit of as well in the last couple of years since I started performing. And it's so funny because with the acting, like I have absolutely no fear whatsoever. Like I don't know what happened. Like I've gone to some of these like filmmaking workshops called Kino D, and like I just have no apprehension whatsoever. If someone tells me to do something behind the camera, I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
what happened? Like I used to be so terrified when I was younger. But I don't know, something to do with maybe turning 30. But with the music, it's more of there's a bit more work to be done there. As I mentioned, like trying to own the stage and feel more comfortable. Like there's like a bodily kind of like rewiring your brain, like I have to rewire myself to feel comfortable to take that space.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that because I turned 30 last year, and it is this weird thing where I don't know, kind of like these self-imposed sort of, I guess, societal expectations about where you have to be in at certain points in your life and stuff. It does make you kind of reevaluate things, and I think that can have positives and negatives too. Like, like you were mentioning, I think it does kind of like give you a bit of a kick to actually start, start something and to kind of like, I don't know, give your life meaning, I guess, or
Yeah.
I don't know, like maybe that's a dramatic overstatement, but there is this sort of thing where you do start kind of questioning yourself, especially if it's like entering a new decade, of
Mm.
your life. So, yeah, I mean, like, do you find that like periods in your life have kind of like brought something out in you creatively or creatively
Mm.
rather
Mhm.
or do you find that it was just like a particularly like it was just that birthday in particular that kind of like made you go, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's hard to know because I suppose in the grand scheme of things, this is only like entering my fourth decade, and the first and second decade of my life, I mean, I can mark going into my 20s because I finished my degree in visual art, And then I worked in visual. I kind of went in and worked in art galleries, more than pursuing my own visual art career or like visual art practice. And then going into my 30s, I've started doing music. So who knows what I'll do in my 40s and 50s. But I'd like to think that like music and hopefully acting and like writing, I suppose that's something I like to do. Writing will be part of that. And I suppose, you know, um as many creative people would say, like I'm sure, like because having gone to panel talks with musicians who would be considered to be doing quite well, like everyone has a full-time job, so obviously it's the dream and the goal is to be able to create something creative like your full-time work, and I'm definitely not there. So that's kind of the ultimate goal, whether whatever form that takes. But yeah, I suppose creativity was always part of my life, like in school and everything like that. Like I think art was my best subject in the leaving cert, so there was always going to be creativity there. And it's just it is nice to see how that's developing, but I suppose I still feel like almost young in that,
Yeah. I
in that
remember when
process.
I did art, I was like really good at it in secondary school, and then for the leaving cycle, they added art history, and that's where I like flunked because I
Oh
just
yeah,
couldn't.
yeah,
I'm not good at remembering dates and things like that. I'm remembering
yeah.
specific painters, so that was where I was like, oh no, I just absolutely
Oh
dropped when
no.
art history got added into the mix.
I remember I got really lucky because or I got lucky. I remember on the art history paper that came up. I don't know what year you did your leaving cert, but there was
2011.
2011. Okay, I was 2010. Um, we studied like there was like three different questions that come up. One was like Newgrange, one was like another
Yeah.
period or whatever. And then this random one that got thrown in that we were not prepared for, and it was to do with like Banksy and street art. And like it hadn't been something that we had covered at all, but at the time I was like obsessed with Banksy and I had like his book and I was like, oh, screw the other questions that we've been studying for the last 2 years. I'm just going to write about this one. And I think I did quite well. And I think like it was just pure fluke and luck, but that's what helped me do well in the
Yeah, no,
leaving
I
cert.
had a similar thing with the English essay because I remember for English paper two, if I'm getting it correct, we had to study these like authors, and you never knew which author was going to come up or which poets were going to come up, and like it's like okay, study Patrick Kavanagh, study W.B. Yeats, and you're making sure like that you're covered, and then like Emily Dickinson popped up, and I was just again, autodidactly a fan of Dickinson,
Mm,
so I was like, yes, so I did look out in English, so
nice. Okay, you win some, you lose some, I suppose. That's
yeah,
it.
it's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Before we talk about Queen Bitch and the inception of that project, there's two things I want to cover. So, if I'm correct, again, I could be getting it wrong, but I think you then enrolled and actually studied music. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, well, I did. I studied piano as a child. I did my grades with Cork School of Music. Um, and then just in the last few years, like again, coming out of the lockdown, I did some guitar lessons and I did some singing lessons as well. So that's as a child as well, I did some music theory. So that's kind of my music education. But the theory, I suppose it must have gone in one ear and went out the other because I mean I don't even know what chords I'm playing sometimes with the songs
yeah.
and giving other musicians the sheet music and they're like that's not the chord and I'm like oh so it's very yeah very I don't know what happened there.
Do you prefer actually when it comes to like right music, utilizing music theory, or is it just more instinctual, just kind of like what feels right?
It's definitely instinctual. There's very little theory going on whatsoever.
Well, no, because I forget which artists I was speaking to, but they were saying like when they craft music, it's like instinctual initially, and then they add the theory afterwards. It's kind of like I don't know, the base is the instinct.
Yeah, it probably would be good for me to sit down and, once the songs are written and apply some theory, I think it probably would help a lot, especially when it comes to bringing the songs to other musicians to play. Um, so yeah, I might think about that. I might think
There
about
you
doing
go.
that.
Have that idea for free.
Yeah.
When it comes to like your musical influence, I mean, growing up, I mean, because like Queen Bitch's music is obviously so diverse. The project's name, I assume, is a reference to the David Bowie song.
Mhm.
And coincidentally, there's a punk band from like the late 70s called Ether, Eater, and they do a cover Queen Bitch. I think is absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
But
I think I might have heard that.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that version of the
Yeah.
song. But what was your kind of like musical influences, or was it even like consciously kind of thinking of influences again, like
Mm,
just like as you were mentioning, kind of just finding melodies?
mm. Yeah, I definitely wasn't consciously thinking of influences. And I kind of feel like it was actually the quietness of the lockdown and stepping away from so many things in a sense that helped me to find the sound and and my voice. And I think it's something that's still in development. Like um it's funny because like one of the songs that I've released, which is called Peaceful Feeling, which is the first song I performed at an open mic night. When I started writing some of the other songs like Bones and Confines, they were a bit more grungier, and I was like, okay, this is the bitch sound. It's not this kind of bluesy rock sound, which is Peaceful Feeling. Um, Although at the time I'd only ever really played those on acoustic guitar, but I could, Peaceful Feeling works well on an acoustic guitar, whether some of the other tracks are definitely, don't really translate to the acoustic sound.
Sure.
So I thought they were like separate things. But then I brought Peaceful Feeling into the studio where I recorded with the guys just to test it out, and we played it, and I was like, oh no, this is actually great. Like, what was I? This is definitely Queen Bitch. Like,
Yeah.
how was I thinking this was separate? But it just makes the sound more diverse because there's some songs that are a bit more rocky, grungy, some that are a bit more bluesy, and classic rock. But when I've released those and gotten some feedback on them, they've also been referred to as a bit grungy. So I think there's been a common sonic thread has like followed through the songs anyway, which brings them together. But I definitely haven't like limited myself. I actually I did write like two songs that were very like indie folk, and I was like, okay, they definitely won't work. But I suppose with what I'm writing, I'm just trying to allow myself to express myself and not stick within what I think will be a certain genre. I'm allowing it to kind of span a few genres and themes. And I don't know whether that's like how a lot of musicians might work. People might be a bit more particular, but I really like, as I said, like I'm doing this for fun, and it was never something I actively was like, oh, I'm going to become a musician. I just kept following the thread. So I'm just, if the songs come, I just allow them to, and like, unless it feels really off, you like the two, like these kind of couple of indie folk songs.
Yeah, well,
But
that's interesting. I mean, do you think like there'd be an avenue for that? Maybe even like releasing under your own name for those kind of songs that you don't feel are Queen Bitch. Like, do you think of expansion in that way? Because like every musician I talk to has like a million different projects
oh
going at
yeah,
the same time. They're just juggling.
yeah, I have been thinking about it, and then I was actually thinking as well, like, oh, I wonder would I approach some other artists to see if it might work with their music genre, or else maybe I
Hello,
will
Taylor
do it.
Swift.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, collaboration. You got to get the name out there,
Taylor
but.
Swift featuring Queen Bitch. That'd be great.
But yeah, maybe I'll do it like under my like under Róisín or something. Oh, go wild. Yeah.
How did Queen Bitch kind of eventuate? Because if I'm correct, the project began in 2023, and the first introduction to the band for the public was the song Bones that you mentioned.
Mhm.
So I was wondering how did the project kind of come about?
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like the project came about when I bought that guitar at Christmas before the lockdown. And then it was January, which
By the way,
was
can I just say immaculately good timing?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. It was born around the same time as the COVID.
Maybe that was the
But
cause and effect.
yeah, yeah. But I suppose the name Queen Bitch came about in April 2023. So that's when like the name came about. And that was like a really, I suppose, full on year because I went from of activity because I went from like, being very apprehensive about performing to going to open mic nights, kind of meeting musicians, playing with musicians, meeting the guys in Beard Fire Studios where I recorded, recording some songs and then putting one out. I just really just went for it that year, like 2023, just went for it. Um, so yeah. What was the question? It was kind of like how did Queen
Yeah,
Bitch
just the project kind of like form, and in terms of like the other musicians that are in the project, like kind of like meeting
Mm.
them and kind of getting them on board.
Yeah, well, it's been like there's been kind of different musicians coming on board at different times. I suppose that's been a part of the journey as well as like learning because I didn't really have any experience of playing with different musicians before. So that's been a big learning process, like learning about different people's style. Like you were saying there about musical influences. I suppose like I've played with like different people who have different backgrounds themselves. And getting to play with these different people has reminded me of like music that I listened to growing up, like pop punk and things like that. And different genres. Like I forgot I was a big Muse fan when I was younger and I went to see Muse like in the Point or the Three Arena. Um but so yeah, so like I have been when I kind of started getting with the band, I was hoping for it to be more of a band project, but then I suppose people have different levels of commitment and things like that too. So people have been coming and going. So I suppose I'm like, is it a solo project? Is it a band? It's kind of trying to work out some of those details or how it's set up. But in a way, it's still like early days, like what like it, the first performance with the full band was November 2023. So just coming up to like a year and a half ago. So again, that's still like an element that's in development.
But how do you kind of like meet the people that you're working with? Because you kind of mentioned that prior to this, you didn't really have like connections in the music industry. You
Mm.
didn't really, so when it came to kind of, was it just like kind of looking for session musicians, or did you know the people that you were working with beforehand? Like, oh, I know this guy, he knows this guy, or how did like,
Yeah,
I don't know, just kind of like getting the personnel.
yeah, all different ways really. So yeah, some people that I had met from going to the open mic nights. Then I played with the guys that I recorded with in the studio, and they actually just the studio was just across the road from me, in Harrows Cross, which was just very handy and convenient. And it wasn't really for the convenience; it was actually because they really love like rock music. But it was just kind of serendipitous, I suppose, that they were so close to me. And then yeah, like people that I knew through other people, putting like posts up on Facebook. There's a really good website, Band Mix,
Yep.
where musicians, so that as well. And just like yeah,
Well, I once
meeting.
heard that described as the Tinder for musicians.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very handy. Yeah, and then like also just meeting people out and about at gigs and things like that as well. So any any way as possible,
By any means necessary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what's that actually? Because you mentioned Bearfire, and I've been speaking to a lot of artists. I mean, they're getting a lot of traction. Like a lot of artists
Mm,
are recording there, doing stuff there. I've heard nothing but good things. I don't have any first-hand experience, but what's that? Just a matter of, well, that's what's close in proximity to me, or did you actually
mm,
kind of like study and kind of go like, okay, these are the
mm.
studios that I think would work for me, or how did you kind
Yeah.
of like land with them?
Yeah, I had been doing a bit of research because it was just like an area that I really didn't know anything about. And again, I had been playing in the band with a few different musicians, had a few rehearsals with a few musicians for the band, and I was trying to figure out, okay, like, are we a band that we're going to record together? Um, I was looking up different studios. Um, I suppose, well, yeah, so a couple of the people at the time didn't stay on with the band, and it was kind of back to me and just the guitarist. And I had been talking to different studios where it was like, okay, yeah, you get the band in, you get the engineering, you rent the studio, then you get the stuff, you get it mastered and mixed. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much in this. And then Beardfire, they were just like, oh, well, we do if you don't have a full band, like we can do the arrangements and we have the studio already. We have, we do the engineering, we do the mastering, and we do the mixing. And I was like, oh my God, they just do everything,
Yeah.
because they're like a full round, like, so like a lot of the musicians they record with, they might have a solo artist that comes in and they do all the tracks. So I was like, right, well, this is something that I know I can do and I will get a product at the end of it. Like I will have a recorded song. The other thing I was like, it's just so much going on for me when I know so little that I couldn't see it happening,
Yeah.
and again, for me, it was like, this year of, well, I was 31 then, but I was like, I wanted to make sure that I could see things happening and I wasn't going to continue procrastinating for another decade.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, this is the way to go. And also when I sent them the recordings, they really liked the songs, and I just got such good feedback. And I was like, right, this just feels great. Like they're excited about the song. Let's do it.
Do you actually think, because you mentioned there, like recording music in your 30s and writing music in your 30s, like a lot of people who kind of start bands when they're like teenagers that have recordings out or even in their 20s, like sometimes they reflect on it and they go, oh geez, I wish I didn't release that or whatever, whether it's for music or whether it's for lyrical content that they feel no longer resonates or was kind of sophomoric in some way. For yourself, do you think it's actually kind of beneficial to have some and I can say this because we're basically the same age, some seniority, some maturity in that sense, to kind of be able to go, well, I know everything that I'm kind of like penning now is sort of, I don't know, has a degree of maturity, has a degree of, it's not something that's going to cause me regret later down the line.
Yeah, I hope so. One would hope. Um, yeah, like I definitely think I remember when I was in art college, like half the year were mature students.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there was a benefit in that because like I was coming out of school and I didn't know what I wanted to make art about. I really didn't know what I was about and I still had so much to learn and I feel like as I got older, I was like, oh, I'd love to go to art college with a bit more life experience. Under your belt. But I suppose like that's what the music project came from having a bit more of that life experience and kind of processing a lot of things in my 20s and kind of what's the word like what's the word? The songs are therapeutic, like
Yeah.
they kind of and they help me to put like a full stop on certain things and move on as well. Um but I I still go back sometimes and I listen and I'm like, oh, that could have been better, like or those lyrics. So, but I just try not to dwell on things like that too much because again, that would just be a reason for me to like not put things out.
Yeah.
And like I have more songs that I'm working on that I want to record, and I'm like in the grand scheme of things, like if I'm lucky, in like a decade, I might have like so much more work that like those little details that I'm like, oh, I feel that could have been better. They won't really matter. I'll just be happy that I did something and I put something out and I didn't keep procrastinating. Um, yeah, t time will carry on.
Well, even if it doesn't resonate with you like later in life, I mean, it's still kind of just like a documentation of that
Mm,
time in your life in some way when you like you were mentioning kind of like processing things. The therapy through music thing is interesting because um yeah, I don't know, it's like kind of exercising demons in a way or like yeah, just stuff that's kind of like been in your life and you kind of like reflect upon and yeah, I definitely think by 30, most people have kind of a wealth of experience to kind of take from.
mm,
Um, so, one thing I was going to ask actually was a little bit about the kind of guitar tone you use because you mentioned starting with acoustic. Obviously, with Queen Bit, you use electric. So, I was
mhm,
wondering, what was that process like in terms of like finding your tone?
mhm,
Were you trying to emulate closely what you're doing on an acoustic and just bring it to the electric? And because like guitar tones, when you make that first switch to electric, it's like it's pretty intimidating, or at least I found it
mhm,
intimidating because it's like there's so many different settings just on the amp
mhm,
alone. Then you bring effects in, and then the settings on the guitar itself, and it's kind of it's a very trial and error thing. So I was wondering, like,
mhm.
how would you kind of like settle on like this is my sound as a guitarist?
Yeah, to be honest, it probably isn't as thoroughly thought through as I feel like I would like to be saying in response
Yeah.
to that question. I suppose like when I got the electric guitar, I was like, it's very clean. Like I definitely wanted that kind of a grungy sound. So I was like, oh yeah, distortion, like just overdrive and distortion. And then I think I bought I bought this like pedal that was just grunge. It was just called grunge. I think it was like I just saw like someone was selling it on Dundee and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get that like grunge pedal. And it was just like I think it was brought out to like emulate Kurt Cobain sound. And then I had that overdrive and something else, and it was just way too much. And I think I was like in the studio, playing with like Rowan and Al and whoever else was about at the time when we were recording, and I had them all on, and I don't know if anyone said anything directly, but I think I just saw the expressions on people's faces, and I was like, yeah, maybe turn one of those off. It's just a bit too
It's like I'm
much.
reading the room.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, I just use the Boss. distortion. What's I don't even see. I'm like I'm not like a guitar nerd or a pedal
That's
nerd or
fine.
anything like that.
Neither am I really. I kind of have my little preferences. For me, it was literally just like going like, what guitarists do I like and what do they use, and just trying to emulate that as close as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. Just get their pedal, grunge pedal, Kurt
Pretty
Cobain
much,
pedal.
yeah.
But yeah, that was it. Like I don't really need too much. I just wanted a bit of that kind of like heavier sound for some of the songs, and then some of them I do play a bit more clean. Some of those bluesier ones.
I just want to, before we move on, I just want to mention the band Sonic Youth had they used to make all these like short videos and sell them on VHS, and they have a short film called Grunge Pedal where I think Kim Gordon bought that. Like, I don't know if it's the
Oh
same
yeah.
one you're using, but it's just them like testing it out and trying to get like the sound, trying to emulate Nirvana and the Melvins and all these bands.
Oh,
So I'd recommend that as a watch. It's like I think it's only like 5 minutes long or
oh
something. I
yeah.
think it's on YouTube, but I'd like to know if that's the same one.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they got on because I don't think it really did what it said on the tin. Even though it just said grunge, but
Maybe that's why someone was putting on Done Deal.
yeah, yeah. So I've actually since sold it myself. I sold it on
Okay.
again myself.
That pedal
Uh,
has so much like longevity. It's
yeah.
like it just has so much history to it.
On to its like eighth or ninth owner at this point, maybe more, who knows?
Soon to be its 10th.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually the recording of Queen Bitch, do you record in bulk or do you record each song individually? Because last year, like I said, the Bones came out in 2023, and then like last year, like it was like a new release pretty much every 2 months, I want to say roughly.
Mhm.
So were they all kind of like bulked and then you just kind of release them throughout the year, or was it like one at a time?
Mhm. Yeah, we I started with one with the guys in Beard Fire just to test it out and see how it went working with them. And then that went really well. So I was like, great, yeah, like let's do more. And we recorded in bunches of three, I suppose. So we did like three songs together, then a couple like a little while later we did another three songs, and then a little while later we did another three songs. Um, so we did like work on the three songs at the same time, which was kind of a handy and kind of like efficient way to do it as well, I suppose, because we just like could like book in time. So like we had one session that was just to like track the three songs, another session to get like just the drums and bass down. And it just made it work for all of our schedules, which was a priority at the time.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like that's the big thing is just like the logistics of kind of having a project. Actually, is that something that because like obviously when you're a solo artist, you have some kind of like self-determination over your time and your gigs. Obviously, like commitments in life and stuff like will dictate that too. But generally, you don't have to worry about scheduling. Is that like a new facet now that you have people you're working with, or?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I suppose the one thing I'm thinking about now is I started this newer job like a few months ago, which is shift work, which I actually didn't really realize like beforehand that would really limit like the availability I have. So it's actually
Right.
myself that's the most awkward, I think, to schedule because having the 9 to 5 is actually quite handy for knowing that you're definitely going to be free evenings and weekends. But there's not like a huge amount of activity going on, I suppose, with the band at the moment. Like I'm going to do the release gig in June for to coincide with the release, but that's all that's going on for the next 3 months anyway. That's for the full band. So that's quite there's not too much pressure, we're like we're having a rehearsal on Sunday. We'll have another one in May and then a couple again in June. Um so yeah, it just depends on what's going on and what's coming up.
I don't want to jinx it, but it would really suck if like your manager's like, we need you in that day and it's
Oh
immovable.
yeah, for the day of the gig or for the
Yeah.
day of the rehearsal. Yeah, no, I'm
Either
definitely.
or.
Oh
And probably the
yeah,
gig. I think the gig would be worse.
yeah. No, I'm very much like I have like days where I'm definitely off, and if I'm called to come in, I'm like, no, it's not. It's just not happening. I've I've got my boundaries now. Too
Yeah.
late.
No, that is important actually, because like a lot of people who are like working as musicians do shift work and casual contracts and things like that. Sometimes self-determined, sometimes it's just the opportunities that are available. But yeah, I think in some ways it's helpful, but in other ways, like again, you can just get like that immovable sort of shift where it's like we need everyone all hands on deck. So it's just like ugh, it can be testing.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely hard to kind of like find the right balance, but like for example, this Sunday, like we're just practicing with um three out of four of us because not everyone can make it, but then we'll do another one in May in a few weeks' time where someone else will be missing. But it's just making sure that we kind of meet up and get some practice done. Yeah, you just make do with what you can, you know.
Before I talk about this new single you have coming up, I want to ask one thing. Has the music you listen to at all changed or altered since you've been doing Queen Bitch? And if so, has those new influences kind of been making their way into your songwriting?
Yeah, it's actually a real mixture. Funny enough, like I have some songs like that I've written that I hope to like record in the next, the year or two. But I found a lot of like Foo Fighter influence creeping into it, and I haven't listened. Like I liked Foo Fighters when I was younger, and I listened a lot, but I haven't been listening recently at all. So I was like, oh, like that's directly kind of coming from that song, you know. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. But then yeah,
You
definitely I'm
just like
being
keep accidentally writing Everlong. You're like, shit, I did
yeah,
it
not again.
again.
Um, but yeah, I think like a big thing is like having gone out to the open mics and like meeting musicians, like definitely being influenced by, like local musicians and musicians that are kind of in a similar boat to me in terms of where they're at in their career, I suppose. Actually, I wrote a song that definitely was inspired by CMAT. I think. I think I've just got away without like, it sounds quite different, but I kind of took a lyric idea without meaning to. It just happened. And then actually one of the songs that's out already, Turn the Lights Down, was like directly inspired by an artist. I don't know if you know Palomi or the band Epi.
I
Um
did know that, but yes.
yeah, yeah. So she like wrote a song, and I remember like I first heard it on. She posted about it on Instagram, and I just thought, I'm like, oh my God, that's like the best song ever. I was like, oh
I'll
no,
take that.
yeah. I was like, what am I going to
You came
do?
in with like
Like,
a burlap sack to the gig. You're like,
yeah.
like the Grinch or something.
No, but I literally like I did have a bit of a crisis because I was like, that's such a good song. Like, what's the point in going on with my life now? And then I
Jeez.
ended up I just couldn't get over it until I wrote this song, which doesn't sound anything like it, but it was just inspired by the kind of the energy of it or the feeling that I felt when I listened to it. And then I was able to like move on and carry on with my life then because I was like, grand, I've got an equally good song now.
Well, I think that's
All is
interesting
right with
too.
the world.
I think it's interesting taking influences from your contemporaries. I think that shows a more sincere appreciation of the art beyond just, hey, we're here for a gig. It's like, no, I'm actually kind of engaged in your music enough to the point that I'd plagiarize it. Am I joking?
No, it's great. It sounds like very different, but it's kind of just I don't know what it is. It's like the feeling of yeah, I don't know. You'd never know that I took inspiration from that. I don't think you'd ever know that I took inspiration from that song for what I came up with, but
Okay, I'm not going to test you on it. I'll let the court summons do that for you.
they'll be the judge of that.
You'll be
Yeah.
judged by a jury of your peers. Um, so the new release is coming out. I have it here, May 29th. Just
Mhm,
I want to make sure I got it correct. Even If I Pray and a popular song.
mhm,
Um, I guess like the first thing is this is your first double release if I'm
mhm,
correct. I think you're gearing up towards an album. I'm not sure if it's
mhm,
this year or next year you're planning for that, but has the music you've been releasing so far going to be part of that larger project? And
mhm,
well, I guess we'll start there and then we'll talk
mhm,
about the singles in
mhm.
particular. So.
Yeah, so I suppose because I recorded that bunch of 10 songs with Beardfire, and it kind of feels like in a way it's been going on for a while now. Like the songs have kind of been like recorded and done for almost like a year. I suppose this time last year we had finished recording. So I am looking to kind of just like sign off on that and move on to the next projects. I've got more songs that I'd like to kind of start focusing on. And I kind of feel like it feels like a bit of a conveyor belt where I'm like, I can't really think too much about these songs while there's still these other songs that I want to like share and put out into the world, you know.
Yeah.
There's only so much room in my head and capacity for everything, and I would like to move on. So yeah, I'm kind of like almost signing off on this body of work by putting out what I plan to do is to put out an album of the 10 songs because it's just they were of a certain time, they were the songs that I started developing and writing during lockdown and kind of overcoming my fear of singing. And then these other
Sure.
songs that I have now are kind of after that period. So it is kind of like, yeah, signing off on that time, on that bunch of songs, and then moving, making room for what might be next. Um, so um, so yeah, I've released 6 songs. This will be this double release is the 7th and the 8th, and then there'll be 2 more songs, which I think I'll just put them all out as a bunch at the end of the year.
Perfect. No, actually, that's an interesting thing too, because like I think a lot of artists like they like shift and grow, but there is this kind of like need to sort of document the songs that like I don't know, maybe necessarily isn't indicative of their direction going forward, but I don't know, they just kind of want to have it out and just be like, yeah, we're going to record these, and they're not really resonant with us anymore, but you know, it's just nice to have, I guess. Is that your kind of feeling too?
Yeah, like they still, I mean, they still resonate, but I also feel like I am a different person from when I wrote them, just because I've grown since so much since then. But like I do like to like listen to these songs and definitely still connect with them. And like it's funny because things happen in life, and then I kind of feel like, oh, that ties back to that song. It's almost like I was in the past, I was writing about this thing now, and which
Yeah,
happens with all different music. I suppose I can listen to other artists' songs and I feel similarly, but it's interesting when it happens with your own work.
yeah,
Um, so but yeah, it's also just good to like, with some of the songs there were so many like back and forth on little decisions, and it's just good to kind of again like to not procrastinate. If for me it feels good to just kind of sign off on it and put it out and say like that's done, because there's been so many projects I suppose that I never see foot through to completion, so it just feels really satisfying to be like I did that, like, that wasn't
yeah.
there a few years ago and now it's out there and I've shared it. So
Uh, Perfect. Well, let's talk about this upcoming release then. So,
mhm.
these 2 songs, I mean, do you feel that they're because as I was listening to it, I did feel that they were very complementary to each other.
Mhm.
What's their kind of thematic, I guess, continuity between the songs, or
Mhm.
similarities between the songs, or what do you kind of feel like this is right as like a double release?
Yeah, definitely the sound, like I felt like they worked as a pair sonically, the
Yeah,
just the sound of them. And then they're both quite long songs, I suppose. Like some of the songs I have out are shorter, 3, 4 minutes, and some of them are a bit longer, but these two are like 6, 7 minutes each. So um like there was talk when I was kind of putting songs out before with a PR company about like trying to make radio friendly length and all of this, but I don't know, I just really see them as like 2 pieces of artwork. Um and a popular song is the song I kind of started writing first, like of all the songs in 2020. And
yeah,
it's a very basic guitar chord, like guitar sorry, chord progression.
sure.
Because it was
That's
when
that music theory coming
yeah,
in.
it was when I was like, I had no intention of writing songs, but it's just the song that I started with and followed through. And there was some other songs around that time that didn't didn't follow through because they were just very much like, oh, this is someone really just starting and learning to write music. But that one really just kept going. And it took me like I suppose it took me years to finish. Like again, it was one of those songs where I wrote the lyrics to one of the choruses like the day I was going into the studio because I was like, Roisin, it's been going on for 4 years now. You just finish writing the song. I just needed that deadline, and I'm happy. I'm happy with what I got. Like it didn't put me under pressure in a bad way. It put me under pressure in a way where I was just really acutely like thinking about, okay, what's the song about? Like what am I being inspired by in my life right now that's filling in the narrative for these lines, and something happened, that inspired the lines, and I was like, oh yeah, that fits there. Like that's what I want to put in there. And then Even If I Pray was quite a different song. I actually wrote I wrote the chorus for that like around Christmas time, and it happened very quickly. That song happened a lot more quickly. It just kind of fell into place um quite naturally without like a whole lot of thought. So the two of them are quite different in that sense, but then in the themes of the song as well, a popular song is like about kind of like changing a narrative, like about there being a song that's really popular, but maybe isn't like serving the people that well.
Yeah,
And it's about like rewriting it. So I think in the blurb for the song, it's about like kind of like changing the status quo, and that status quo was like again like societal expectations. Like I suppose there's probably an element of me thinking the personal element of me deciding to pursue music going into my 30s, that isn't really where I thought I'd be going in life, or like where like friends around me. I mean, I think people around me thought I was kind of crazy. They were like, "What? You're going to start like a band when you're going into your 30s?" But like it's about like writing a new song that's the new status quo, and kind of lets go of those expectations from society of what you shouldn't be doing at this time. And then even if I pray is similar in a way, it's kind of like about letting go of the past that might be holding you back or weighing you down. Um, and it's kind of like it's quite the song is really sitting in a lot of those like negative experiences. It's kind of like and then it's at the very end of the song that it's kind of like looking towards some more hope. It's like, oh, need to find something new. So it's like saying, okay, well, this has been what's the way things have been, but it's time to like maybe let go and move on now. But like move on to what? Don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I actually, if you'll permit me to be a bit cheesy and hokey, I think there's actually something really nice what you mentioned about the process of writing a popular song, where because there is that kind of like gap, I guess, or that like long period of time between like kind of starting the song and actually finishing it. It's kind of like your more older, mature sense kind of guiding your younger sense to the finishing line in a way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like the process was like interesting for that song for sure.
But it kind of from what you're saying, I mean, it seems to me to actually kind of, in a weird way, kind of like fit the theme of the song in a way. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Yeah. And it's kind of um it's kind of like an arch over the whole project in a way, you know. That's and it's called a popular song. I don't know, yeah. Yeah.
Well, then you have to look at the analytics in that song in particular compared to your other songs. You're like, oh, come on.
We'll see how popular it is. Yeah. Yeah.
I also want to plug two gigs you have coming up. Correct me if I'm getting any of these details wrong, but actually the day before the singles will come out,
Mhm.
you're playing at the Generator Hostel in Smithfield, which is cool. I actually didn't know they did gigs there. I actually didn't know it had the space. I've never been in it. I know the
Oh yeah,
Generator. I
yeah.
see it every time I'm in Smithfield, but I've never been in, so I didn't know they actually had the space for musicians. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I haven't been to a gig there before. I've been to a few other things, but they do have like is it like a little stage space? Yeah,
I've never been
they've
in.
got a good setup. It's very spacious in there anyway. Yeah.
And the other gig is
Mm.
actually the launch release at the Crowbar
Mhm.
Terrace, June 21st. I've never actually been there. It's funny, I've been to
Mhm.
the Button Factory a bunch of times, never actually been to the Crowbar. Well, I've been in there
Mhm.
technically, like the bar area, but I've never
Oh, yeah.
like seen the show in the upstairs area, I think.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It's nice because it's the summer solstice, so it's going to be a bright day. So I thought that might be it. It's quite a nice venue. It's got like tall windows.
Yeah,
Because I just thought on that kind of a day, it's going to be harder to entice people down to like a basement, like in Wortman's
sure.
or Fibbers or something like that. So I just tried to like think of a venue that would be suitable for the summertime. But yeah, it's nice. It's not too big a venue, so not too much pressure to get it filled up. But
Yeah, I think it holds 80 if I'm correct.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's the two upcoming gigs. So thanks for plugging them.
No problem.
Yeah. I'll be sharing a lot more on socials in the coming weeks, and there'll be some kind of like ticket offers and things like that, some merch, uh, official Queen Bitch merch for the first time. So lots of activities coming up.
There's two final things I just want to touch on before we wrap up. One actually is just something based on what you're saying there about consideration for venues. So I was wondering, kind of like, what sort of clubs do Queen Bitch typically like play at? Like, where have you gigged at in the past? And do you have like preferences, favorability, or is like anywhere that will have us?
Yeah, I suppose like like it's been venues like Fibbers, the basement and upstairs.
Those are rites of passage to those venues.
Yeah, like the kind of the rock places. Like I'd love to play
Yeah,
Sinead. I'm doing a solo show, solo set in Sinead next week actually in the basement, but I'd love to play like the main stage there as well. I have done like Workman's, Whelan's, yeah, the kind of like the rock places. I suppose like with Crowbar as well, it's a bit like there's no stage there, so it is a bit of a different venue. Like it's not like as I said, like it's not like a dark rock bar. So it will be a different setting or fit, So it'll be interesting to see how the music works there. But I don't think I've come across anything that I feel like would be totally off limits. I'm trying to
Sure.
think now. But yeah, like anywhere that would I don't want to say like anywhere that would take it. I definitely have standards as well. But
Sure.
this, we have some pretty good venues in Dublin,
I think so too. Yeah, I think it's nice to explore. I'll say that much. I actually think like we are very fortunate with venues, not only in Dublin, but I think across the country too. I think I've been speaking about this a lot, but I don't know if if you're thinking of like
Oops.
touring or going
Sorry,
around.
it just froze there.
Oh, no, can you hear me? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I can hear you fine, yeah. Like there's a lot of great venues I think across the country, and I think like so many like little pockets. It's not just the major cities like Dublin, Belfast, Cork, Limerick, Galway anymore. It's like everywhere has their own like just
Mhm.
like nice little scenes. So I think there's like plenty of options. Have you given consideration for touring outside of Dublin, or is it just kind of Dublin centric at the moment?
Oh yeah, like I'd love to go outside of Dublin and there's been like a few talks of different things that just hasn't materialized yet, but it's kind of about getting, making sure everyone has the time, getting the resources to do it as well. And like this is only my second time putting on a gig in the Crowbar, so I probably have a bit of experience to gain as well there on the kind of the side of putting on a gig and what's needed on the
Oh, so you're doing
technical
self
side.
promotion, is it? Or
Yeah, like, well, I suppose I'm putting on the gig on myself. There's a sound engineer there, and they provide a backline, which is great. Like, but that's another reason I went to this venue because that's just like an element of stress that's taken
yeah.
off having to organize that. But I think if you're going to some other venues, you might have to provide those things. So, like, yeah, that's definitely the goal is to play outside of Dublin for sure. And like, I'd love to play outside of Ireland and bring the music as far as I can. But one step at a time, baby steps.
Yeah. And the final thing I'll ask you, and I'll let you go on your day, is when it comes to the kind of visual side of Queen Bitch and the artwork, which I think is actually very distinct and very there's great continuity between the kind of visual art side and you're speaking about merchandise there and things like that. So is that all you, or do you kind of work with other artists, or how does that kind of work? Do you use your background, I guess, for that
Yeah.
element too?
Yeah, it's been a mix. I suppose it's yeah, there's been other artists that have done like artworks for the singles and then I've done some of them as well. Um I think it's been interesting because having come from such a visual background, I think I spent a lot of time focusing on in almost too much of a perfectionist way and like getting the right artworks and things like that. And I realized that was actually holding me back a little bit because I was over focusing on it.
Yeah.
And like, at the end of the day, it's about the music and um when you get things up onto Spotify and you have like the single artwork, it's so small, and then when you put the album up there, that's going to become the album image then, and the images are kind of they're important, but I had to pull back on the importance I was giving them because it was um kind of I don't know sabotaging in a way the
Yeah.
priority of getting the music out there. Um, so and yeah, other than that, it's kind of again, it's like an intuitive thing. Like there's a couple of photographs that are the images for these singles coming up in May, and they're photographs that I took like last year with no intention of using them for artwork, but just going back through folders of images I have, I came across them and I was like, oh, I feel like they really represent these songs. And then I think the album cover is going to be a photo that I took like actually 2 years ago with a photographer, which has just stuck with me. I've used it for promotion all the way along, but I'm like, I feel like it represents this period of time as well. Um, and I want it to be there in some way at the end of this bunch of songs. So yeah.
Combining your love of music and art, do you often get inspired by, I guess, kind of like the differences in like an album art cover when it's like vinyl versus CD versus cassette? 'Cause I that was something I was always like very interested in, was like how much more, because obviously it's just it's a bigger canvas, but like how much more detailed album art was on a vinyl record compared to a CD, and then how they had to kind of like work around the limitations of like a little cassette to get that art represented and stuff. I don't know,
Oh yeah.
is that something that in any way kind of interests you, just in terms of like how kind of album art and all that material is kind of represented based on the medium.
Yeah, like I'd love to. I just realized as I was saying there, I was saying Spotify, but like I suppose like I'd love to be having doing vinyls, and I'd love to have more artwork. It's just there isn't the time or the capacity for that at the moment. Like I'd love to have whole like stage design or like like a background backdrop or something like that. But and I have like like ideas for these things, but it's just not where the project is. So you just have to, again, I'm like if I'm
It's also,
thinking,
sorry, I don't mean to
yeah,
interrupt, but it's also difficult to kind of incorporate those things when you're at like a club level because each club is so different and their tech and
yeah,
what's available is so different. Where it's like if you're at like a theater level or you're at like an arena level and stuff like that, there's kind of continuity between the venues you're playing. But like with
mhm,
clubs, is everything is so like individualized that you kind of have to work within the means of what that club
yeah.
can pragmatically provide. Sorry, as you were saying.
Yeah, no, 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 that's exactly it. It's like you just have to address where you're at now, and like all I'm dealing with at the moment is like Spotify icons, Spotify
Sure.
squares, and social media as well, obviously too. Like I've made some kind of like teaser video clips for these songs now, which I'll be putting up. But like your mind is thinking about those things. But I would love for like the art to be more incorporated into it. But again, that's kind of like if this kind of thing was my full time and I had the capacity to do those things, that would definitely be the way it would be going.
Yeah. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're doing very well. Like
Thank you.
you already have in the last year alone you've had more of a discography than a lot of artists who've been going like longer than you. So you're doing well.
Thanks, sorry. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Roisin, for your time. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Anything people should know? Maybe if you want to plug where people can find you and all those things.
Yeah, so the social media, Instagram is Queen Bitch Music,
All
and
one
there's
word, or is there like dashes and underscores?
yeah, just one word straight through, and then I think the majority of social media is Queen Bitch Music, all one word, except TikTok is Queen Bitch Official
Yeah.
because and then hyperfollow.com/Queen Bitch as well is the like
The
website with
link
all the
tree kind of
different
equivalent, yeah.
link tree. Yeah, so everything will be there. So yeah, please follow and stay up to date. Yeah, and I have a mailing list set up as well, which you can find on the link tree, the hyper
Oh,
follow.
very nice.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Roshi.
So
Enjoy the
thanks so much,
rest of your
Aaron.
day. It's really
Thank
nice
you.
talking with you.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.